in the classroom half days, and then I would have to replace that staff person to cover that. And as well as, even though it's half days, that teacher does other things that would be done in the classroom the rest of the day. So that teacher's really replaced it since the family's full day. So it's a full lead teacher that would need to be replaced. And the plan would be putting not a lead teacher but an assistant teacher in there, because that's the model of our other classrooms. And so that's the differences in those two budgets. And so if you don't have a color printer, you don't see the sections that I'm here for specifically are the projected 20% that is part of the 2013-2017 agreement that you guys have with Center for Families on the budget. And so if everything stays normal, that's $1,670,000 plus $200 more dollars, and the other one's $177,000 for that. Does everybody know about the plan and the proposal for that one, or do I have to backtrack about the agreement?
Please backtrack.
Okay, so 4 years ago, an agreement was developed where your organization would contribute 20% of my overall operating budgets for the Center for Families Child Care. And that was a follow-up of a previous 4 years where there was 17% contributed to the budget. And so the budget gets covered by a percentage from student government, a percentage from the college, and then the other part is from the fees that we charge for the child care services. Within that agreement, there are other components to that, such as if we had a major appliance breakage, we would cover 50% if there was a match, and then there's a piece in there if there was a year-end deficit of contribution up to a maximum amount for that. So that was developed, and that's the plan that's been being followed from 2013, and it ends for this next fiscal year.
Yeah. Isn't this the last year? Isn't
Yes.
this year 4, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Revisit another plan. But that's another meeting, another day. You'll also see that I am projecting a deficit budget for both of these. I met with Dan Johnson, my supervisor. I'm sure you guys are familiar with him, because what I'm finding is every year we know we're going to be in a deficit, and I said, do I present a fake amount of revenue that I anticipate, or do I go with what I really believe is reality? And so I have adjusted the revenues of what I have seen over the last 4 years, and knew that in order to balance that budget, that was an unrealistic revenue that's coming in. You'll also see at the top there, the notes include, this is based on current fees. I haven't looked at raising fees, likely will. However, that never guarantees more revenue because we have with the college value that we're an open door program to student parents who use ASEdCC to help pay for their child care, and that's a very much different fee rate than what we can charge. And so if I raise rates, it really only falls on about 10% of the students who use the center, because right now we have 75% of our families are using ASEdCC to pay for the child care, which makes a major impact on our budget as well. Do I get to call you or somebody else? See hands raising.
Do you have a question, Sandra?
Yes, you said 75% of your students?
Mm-hmm.
75% of your students, but how many of, I would like a breakdown of the population of how many of your slots are open to students, how many of your slots are open to staff and faculty, how many are open to the public?
So, this isn't what it currently is, but we have had this ratio of 75% for students and 25% for staff, faculty, community. Right now, we're more 80% students, 20% of that staff, faculty, and I would say community is, we have one child who's from the community. Everybody else is connected to the college for that. And for community, we do not accept the DSHS. They have to pay a higher rate than faculty and students do. There's different rates for all those different categories if they are self-paying. We do allow DSHS for staff and faculty as well.
Kevin?
Could you explain again why the expenditures for AC and AK on both pages different? One is 675 and one is 630.
Right, that has to do with the, as I mentioned before, the Head Start. If we lose Head Start, then I have to hire another teacher that Head Start is currently paying for. So that increases my teacher expenses.
Oh, doesn't that mean you have more revenue but the same expenditure? Why do you subtract the expenditure instead?
So Head Start's contribution is mostly in kind. It's not like a revenue piece other than the $2,000 that's up in the 2576 budget at the top there. Yes, ma'am.
So Lisa, you talked about one community member and then about 20% faculty, staff, 80% students, and that the faculty and staff are eligible even if they're Head Start, or not, I'm sorry, Start, DSHS, thank you.
Which
So-
is about 1% of those qualified for DSHS. There's very few staff faculty that qualify.
So then the money that the students contribute, because I'm assuming that the DSHS are not full paying, it's a subsidized rate. So then the money that they contribute, in essence, 20% of the DSHS, there's essentially maybe subsidizing faculty and staff in some way with
There
that.
could be, but I wouldn't say it's nearly the 20%. I would say it's more like a 1%.
No, what I'm saying is whatever the number is, if it's 1% of that, you're paying essentially 20% subsidy for that faculty staff. I mean, if you take if 20% is across the board, if they pay for 20% of everything, that means their S&A fees are being.
I see it, I don't disagree with that, but the 20% is going over my operating costs, which has nothing to do with the staff and faculty. My costs are the same whether it's 100% students or it's the 80-20, and the reason we have that 20% is because the majority of the faculty pay a higher rate that helps subsidize as well into the revenue pieces of that, because I don't give them a discount for childcare because we're contributing, the discount goes to the students' rates if they're self-paying.
So you split it up. So could you tell us then what those are? Do you break it down by that?
The rates?
Well, I'm saying if you say the students are not subsidizing the DSHS faculty staff, then you probably break out or designate those part of the budgets that's not student generated. See what I'm saying? Right now, they give 20%, so I wondered if then if you just break that out, okay, S&A fees are not paying for faculty, staff, DHS, and this is how I'm managing that in my budget so that we can not tie S&A fees to that.
Take a little work.
Okay.
And
I
it
just
differs from course to
I
course,
just bring
but
that up because.
Yeah, no, I know where you're going with that.
So-
It's not that it can't be done, it's just that it changes from classroom to classroom of who's got 2 staff faculty, who has 0, and then I have
Right.
to do
Okay.
that continual math all year long. So
Yeah,
I need another director to do all that work, but yeah,
Okay.
I get it, yeah.
Yes, Karen.
So I represent the board. I think this is also some of our questions. If I'm not mistaken, you projected deficit last year too, and this year. Right? And this on this paper it says current 2013-2017 fund balance.
Right.
If you projected the deficit, isn't it supposed to be 0 something?
It should be, and projections are really difficult because when I come with those projections, the year end changes because our DSHS revenue constantly changes. It's based on the number of hours, the age of the child, and what one child starts at a rate may change, and parents funding to have DSHS for a while, they might change to self-pay and then they go back to DSHS. And this fund balance is started from 2013, and I think not last year, but the year before, we had a healthy balanced budget. I didn't come with a projection for the end of 14-15. We actually had a balance that year.
So, do you want to subtract it from your total expenditures? So subtract your total expenditures with the fund balance.
Well, that's a possibility, but my understanding of the agreement was that we'd be developing a fund balance so that in the future, we might not have to rely so heavily on student government to help subsidize the budget. We're just not in that place. And as I mentioned, you may not have been at the last meeting was at, that we've been keeping the fund balance in our budget because I have seen other colleges who had a fund balance in a separate account, and the colleges took that money away to use for other things. And so I'm keeping that as a line item in my budget so that it doesn't get lost.
So our budget will stay in the unallocated reserve. So even if you need money throughout the year, you can just come to us. If you are really in the deficit, you can always come to us, and if it's really needed, I believe we will fund your expenditure.
Sandra, you have a question?
One of the questions that I had is in line with what Kevin was asking. A few months ago, we allocated funds to the Center for Families. You presented a budget to us where you
Was anticipating a deficit at
anticipated
the
a
time.
deficit at the time. However,
Which is improving.
However, at that time, I don't think anybody recognized, however, I recognized it and I brought it to the attention of some of the board members at a later time, that you had money in a reserve account at the time, and we allocated you additional funds. And I, had reservations about it. I did not vote at that time. I don't know if you recall, but I did not vote to give you any additional funds because I said she has money in the bank. Why doesn't she spend the money in the bank? If she thinks she's gonna have a deficit, she should spend some of the reserve funds to cover. And my question is, you have a reserve fund, and then somebody brought up, well, what if there's an emergency? And it's already in a contract that we're already obligated to cover a portion of your emergencies. So
On appliances.
on appliances and then somebody says, well, what if a pipe bursts? My assumption is you have some sort of insurance on a child care center.
Or part of the college.
Or we're part of the college. It's a state institution. There are funds to cover incidences like that. So it's not necessary for that. So things, you're covered for, you know, those types of emergencies, except for, you know, like the toys that might get damaged. And those things we would, you know, if you really needed help covering to replace those things, I'm pretty sure we could help you do that. In those instances, the student government would be willing to put forth funds to help in that. So my question is, if you do in fact have a deficit, because we're about to come into the same problem, and we need to be more careful about where we're spending our money to. Not that we don't support the Center for Families, but at this point in time, we have to, okay, if you have money, we're asking you, can you put forth some of the money that you have in your reserve to cover what you think is going to be your deficit, if not all of it, but at least a portion of it, so that we're not adding more money at the end of the year to your reserve. Because it looks like over the past couple of years, that's what's ended up happening, is the money that student government has put forth has actually ended up going into your reserve at the end of the year.
Yes, when you answer the question, we had also, could you answer this question as well? So our guest next, Chen, asked what the fund balance is including, if it includes also institutional funds as well. Yeah, could you also include that in your answer?
That fund balance is purely in our self-support budget. There aren't any institution funds in that. We zero out our institution budget every year. Answer that one first, but I'm getting back to Sandra. No, I am totally open to using that fund balance. I was just following what the spirit of the agreement was and my understanding of that. And if that needs needs to be adapted or changed, I'm fully able to, adjust to that, but I
We
was
don't
going
want
with
you
the
to,
spirit, yeah.
we don't want you to zero out your reserve, but we don't, I mean, I would feel really bad if we gave you more than, you know, we don't wanna give you what's already in your reserve.
Right. I
That,
agree with that.
that's kind of like what we used to do to our parents. You know, I already got my
I
allowance
totally
money,
agree with
but
that,
give me
it's
more
just trying to
allowance.
figure out how to do that projection accurately, so
Yeah.
that we know exactly what's going on there at the end.
Was there any other questions? No? So, it looks like there are like a lot of questions to, Lisa and Wayne also asked you some questions about, the component of the staff and the component of the, student. So I think
I'll go with a
you should
different
do
eyeball
some
at the
more
budget,
work on
yes.
that. Kevin, as the budget and finance officer, do you have any other recommendations for Lisa to, do before she?
So when can you confirm whether you get the renewal for Head Start grant?
They were hoping April, May to know if they're moving forward, but as I said, it could be after July one. They're
So-
moving forward as if it's going to happen, but they don't know it's a federal grant and everybody across the nation is applying for it, as well as multiple people in the county.
So how much should the SNAP fund you? Is it the 167 or the 177?
My recommendation would start at the 167, and I'll revisit you if the Head Start tanks is, you know, kind of where I'm at with that, but I wanted to prepare you that there could be a different piece to that. And yes, I could use the fund balance piece to cover that difference for a year.
So you don't mind if we take